Okay, this is video number 2 of my stories. Starting off with lightning bolt number 1. So, yes, with a throwaway line in the last story, I made a new hero. And the next couple this one and the next two are set during World War II. So, yeah. Which are Lightning Bolt number 1, Green Torch number 0.2, and Warrior number 0.2.
Lightning Bolt number 1, Europe, 1943. The sky was choked with smoke. Explosions rattled the countryside as Allied forces pushed against fortified Nazi positions. Tanks rolled through mud, soldiers shouted over gunfire, and then a streak of yellow lightning tore across the battlefield. Nazis were lifted off their feet before they could pull triggers. Rifles twisted from hands, supply trucks overturned as if struck by invisible force. The soldiers barely saw him. A flash of red, a crack of thunder. They called him Lightning Bolt. But before he was a hero, he was Jay Garnett. Kansas-born, college-educated, physics enthusiast, amateur track star, and curious to a fault. It started in a university laboratory in 1940. Jay had been assisting his professor with experimental research involving heavy water and its potential energy properties. The war overseas had already begun, and the government wanted new energy breakthroughs. Jay worked late, alone. A storm brewed outside. He adjusted the containment chamber as the heavy water sample began reacting unpredictably. "Easy, easy," he muttered. Lightning struck the building. Power surged through the lab. The experimental chamber shattered. Heavy water vapor exploded outward in a blinding flash. Jay inhaled it. The world went silent. He felt his heartbeat once. Then everything slowed. Glass shards hung frozen in the air. Rain outside hovered like suspended diamonds. Jay blinked. He stepped forward and crossed the entire laboratory in a fraction of a second. His pulse thundered in his ears. When time snapped back to normal, he was standing outside the building, 3 blocks away, breathing hard, very much alive. It took weeks to understand. He wasn't just faster, he was impossibly fast. Bullets crawled through the air like drifting insects. Sound bent around him. Friction burned unless he moved carefully. Jay did what any red-blooded American with newfound superhuman abilities would do in the middle of World War II. He volunteered. A tailor commissioned by military intelligence designed his uniform. Bright red shirt with a lightning bolt emblem slashed across his chest. Yellow accents along the boots and belt. Silver metal goggles to protect his eyes from wind resistance. He looked in the mirror, grinned. Guess subtle's out of the question. By 1943, the United States government had made a decision. If they had extraordinary individuals, they would organize them. In Washington, D.C., a meeting took place in a secure chamber. Around the table sat 3 figures. A warrior clad in Amazonian armor, Elena Cross, known on battlefields as the Warrior. A man in a crimson suit holding a glowing emerald lantern, Alan Holt, the original Green Torch. And Jay Garnett. The president's representative folded his hands. The Axis powers are seeking artifacts, weapons, rumors of occult science. We cannot allow them advantages in areas we barely understand. He looked at the 3 heroes. We are forming a team, a united front. Jay leaned back slightly. A team name? The representative nodded. The Justice Syndicate of America. Warrior stood first. If evil organizes, she said firmly, so must we. Alan Holt raised his lantern. What emerald light glowed against the walls. Jay adjusted his goggles. All right then, he said with a grin. Let's run. France. Nazi-occupied territory. Intelligence reported a weapons convoy transporting experimental artillery capable of leveling entire towns. Warrior dropped from the sky like a falling star, shield deflecting machine gun fire as she charged through the front line. Alan Holt raised his lantern. By the torch's light, stand down. Green energy erupted, forming solid constructs that crushed armored vehicles and disarmed soldiers without killing them. But reinforcements poured in. Dozens of Nazi troops rushed from the tree line. Then came the thunder. Lightning bolts streaked across the battlefield, weaving between bullets. He disassembled rifles mid-trigger pull, tied bootlaces together, flipped helmets down over eyes. One Nazi officer shouted in German, only to find himself suddenly hanging upside down from a tree branch, uniform tied in knots. Jay reappeared beside Warrior as she lifted a tank and slammed it into the dirt. "You lift heavy things," Jay said casually. "I'll handle the cardio." Warrior smirked faintly. "You speak too much?" A rocket launcher fired toward them. Alan Holt extended his lantern. A green barrier snapped into existence, absorbing the blast in a brilliant flare. "Focus, lightning bolt," Alan called. Jay grinned. Focused. He vanished. In less than 2 seconds, he disabled every artillery shell in the convoy, removing firing pins, emptying magazines, scattering parts across acres of countryside. He returned, dusting off his hands. Boom, problem solved. Warrior drove her blade into the ground, signaling victory. The remaining Nazis surrendered. The convoy was secured. Villages were saved. As Allied soldiers arrived to take custody of prisoners, the three heroes stood together beneath the smoke-filled sky. Alan looked at Jay. "You're enjoying this a bit too much." Jay shrugged. "If we're going to save the world, might as well have fun doing it." Warrior gazed toward the horizon. "This war will not end quickly." Jay adjusted his goggles, lightning reflecting in their silver surface. "Then it's a good thing we're fast." Far above the battlefield, thunder rolled softly across gray clouds. The Justice Syndicate of America had begun, and the world would never be the same. To be continued.
Now on to Green Torch number 0.2.
Green Torch, number 0.2 before the war, before the Justice Syndicate of America, before the world knew the glow of emerald fire. There was Alan Holt. He had always believed in willpower, not the kind politicians spoke about, not the kind printed on posters, real willpower, the kind that keeps a man standing when fear tells him to run. Alan was a railway engineer in 1938, stationed near the outskirts of Chicago. Practical, logical, a man who believed the world made sense if you studied it hard enough. That belief shattered the night the sky turned green. A freight train derailed outside the city limits after striking something metallic that had embedded itself in the tracks. Alan was among the first responders. The object wasn't debris, it was a lantern. Metallic. Foreign, glowing faintly with emerald light. As workers approached, the air hummed. A dying voice echoed from the wreckage nearby. Not human. Alan followed the sound and found a being unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall, armored in green metal, skin pale and cracked like stone. The alien looked at him. "You possess strong will." Alan didn't run, didn't scream. He knelt. The alien removed a ring glowing the same emerald as the lantern. The torch must not fade. The ring lifted from the alien's hand and flew onto Alan's finger. Power surged through him. Not like lightning, not like fire, like clarity. Fear dissolved. Doubt evaporated. The alien exhaled one final breath, protect, and was still. The lantern pulsed, and Alan Holt stood bathed in green light. The ring responded to thought, to conviction. He willed a beam of energy, and it obeyed. He imagined a shield, and it formed. He concentrated on lifting twisted rail cars weighing tons, and they rose effortlessly, suspended in emerald constructs shaped by imagination. The government arrived quickly. Men in suits, military officers, they demanded answers. Alan gave them only one. "I will use this power to defend." Word spread quietly within intelligence circles. America had something extraordinary. When war officially engulfed the world, Alan did not hesitate. He fashioned a uniform, deep crimson suit reinforced for combat, the glowing green lantern emblem emblazoned across his chest. The ring shone constantly, faint but steady. The press dubbed him Green Torch. 1942, North Africa, a Nazi excavation site had uncovered ancient relics rumored to hold destructive energy potential. Alan hovered above the desert sands, boots inches above the ground, ring blazing against the night sky. Searchlights snapped upward. Führer. Machine guns opened fire. Alan extended his hand calmly. A massive emerald barrier flared into existence, bullets flattening harmlessly against it. "You will cease," he said firmly, voice carrying across the camp. They did not. He responded. Green chains shot from his ring, binding soldiers in place. Constructed battering rams smashed artillery. Towers crumbled under controlled force. A Nazi officer activated a prototype energy cannon. It fired. Alan braced. The blast struck his shield and pushed him backward through 3 tents before he regained stability. His jaw tightened. So that's how it is. He rose higher, ring blazing brighter. Above the battlefield, he forged something massive, an enormous emerald hammer. It came down with thunderous force, shattering the cannon beyond repair. Within minutes, the site was neutralized. But he was not alone for long. As more Axis reinforcements rolled across the dunes, a streak of yellow lightning tore through their vehicles. Lightning Bolt skidded to a stop beside him. "Hey, Torch, you started the party without me?" Alan allowed the faintest smirk. "You're late." I was fashionably late. A thunderous impact followed as Warrior landed between them. Stop, shield raised, scattering soldiers like leaves in wind. "I trust you saved some for me," she said calmly. Lightning Bolt pointed behind her. "About 50. Warrior charged. Alan rose into the air, forming emerald spears that pinned advancing tanks in place. Lightning Bolt became a blur, dismantling weapons faster than men could blink. The three moved like a machine. Strength, speed, and willpower fused together. When the final Nazi soldier surrendered, silence fell over the desert. Warrior planted her blade into the sand. "The enemy grows desperate," she said. Lightning Bolt adjusted his goggles. "Good thing we're better." Alan looked at the glowing ring on his hand. This power was not meant for domination. It was meant for resolve. Weeks later, in Washington, D.C., he stood beside Warrior and Lightning Bolt in a secure chamber. A government official addressed them. "The Axis powers are experimenting with forces beyond conventional warfare. We need unity." Alan lifted his lantern, green light filling the room. "Then we stand united." Thus, the Justice Syndicate of America was formed. Not as symbols, but as soldiers. And as Alan Holt stood between a demigoddess and the fastest man alive, he understood something clearly. The light of the torch would not fade. Not while his will remained unbroken. To be continued.
Now moving on to Warrior number 0.2.
Warrior number .2. Before the modern world knew her as Princess Elena Cross, before the Justice Syndicate of America, there was only war. 1942. Belgium. The village was burning. Nazi forces had rolled through at dawn, their boots heavy against cobblestone streets, their insignia stitched proudly over black uniforms. Civilians were dragged from homes. Resistance fighters were executed in the square. And then the sky split with thunder. She descended like judgment. Armor gleaming bronze and crimson, shield raised, sword blazing in reflected firelight. Bullets screamed toward her. They shattered against her bracers. She advanced without hesitation. A tank rotated its turret toward her position. The warrior ran directly at it. With a roar, she leapt, clearing the distance in a single bound, and drove her blade through the cannon barrel. The weapon exploded in a burst of sparks. German soldiers faltered. "Hex!" one shouted. "Witch!" She landed among them. Her shield slammed into one soldier's chest, launching him backward. She spun low, sweeping legs from beneath two more. With divine precision, she struck weapons from hands, crushed rifles, bent steel like paper. She did not kill unless forced, but she did not retreat. A squad of soldiers cornered a group of villagers behind a stone wall. Before they could fire, gunshots rang out from a different direction. Precise, controlled, American. The Nazi soldiers fell one by one. The warrior turned. From behind a shattered fountain stepped a man in U.S. Army fatigues, rifle still smoking. He was tall, focused, calm, even amid chaos. "You fight like you've done this before," he called out over the crackle of flames. She studied him carefully. "And you aim well for a mortal." He blinked once at that. "Steve Grant," he replied, extending a hand despite the battlefield around them. U.S. Army intelligence. She did not shake it. Instead, she nodded once. Elena. Another wave of Nazi reinforcements stormed into the square. Steve didn't hesitate. He took position at her side. "Guess we're doing this together." The warrior charged. Steve provided cover fire with disciplined precision, targeting threats she couldn't reach immediately. When a machine gun nest pinned civilians behind debris, she shielded Steve as he advanced to disable it. They moved instinctively, like they had trained together for years. After the final truck was overturned and the last soldier disarmed, silence returned to the village. Smoke drifted upward. Civilians emerged slowly from hiding. Steve exhaled, lowering his rifle. "You could change this war," he said quietly, watching her wipe soot from her shield. "It is not my war," she replied. "It is now," he said firmly. She met his gaze. "You fight for borders," she said. "For politics, for flags." "I fight for people," Steve corrected. "The people hiding in those houses, the kids who didn't ask for this." She looked toward the villagers embracing one another in relief. Her jaw tightened slightly. "Back home," Steve continued carefully, "there are others like you. Different abilities. Same goal. We're organizing. Coordinating strikes where normal soldiers can't go." She turned back to him. "Organizing?" "A team," he said. "The Justice Syndicate of America. Lightning Bolt, Green Torch, others coming in. We could use someone like you." "I do not take orders," she replied evenly. He gave a faint smile. "Good. Neither do they." She studied him for a long moment. He wasn't afraid of her. He wasn't intimidated. He simply believed. "Why do you fight?" she asked him. Steve didn't hesitate. "Because if people with power don't step up, the worst men in the world win." Thunder rolled softly above the ruined village. She thought of Themyscira, of her mother's warning, of mankind's endless war, and of the innocent faces she had just saved. Finally, she nodded once. "Very well, Steve Grant," she said. "I will meet these champions of yours." His shoulders relaxed slightly. "Good," he replied, "because something tells me this war is only getting worse." Years later, modern day, Princess Elena Cross stood alone on a balcony overlooking a city that glittered with electric lights instead of fire. She held an old photograph in her hands, black and white. 3 figures stood together in wartime uniforms, Lightning Bolt grinning beneath silver goggles, Green Torch holding his lantern proudly, and Steve Grant between them, smiling faintly. She traced the edge of the photo gently. Steve had not lived to see the war's end, but his belief had endured. He had convinced her that power meant responsibility, not isolation. Without him, there would have been no Justice Syndicate. Without him, she might never have chosen to stand beside mortals as an equal. Thunder murmured faintly in clear skies. Elena folded the photograph carefully and stepped back inside. The world still needed warriors, and she would always answer. To be continued.
And next we have World's Greatest, number 0.2.
World's Greatest, number 0.2 Evergreen City had legends. Most of them were whispered in old newspapers and dusty archives, stories of masked heroes from a different time. Velocity didn't expect one of them to answer the door. The house sat on the outskirts of the city, quiet and unassuming. White paint slightly chipped, wind chimes swaying gently on the porch. Ethan Mercer adjusted his red visor and knocked. A moment later, the door creaked open. An older man stood there, gray at the temples, posture still straight, eyes sharp and alive behind familiar silver goggles resting on his forehead. Jay Garnett, the original Lightning Bolt. "You're late," Jay said casually. Velocity blinked. "I ran here," Jay smirked. "Exactly." Inside, the walls were lined with framed black and white photographs, war-torn battlefields, a woman in armor, warrior, a man holding a glowing lantern, Green Torch, a younger Jay in a red and yellow suit, lightning emblem blazing across his chest. Velocity stared at them. "You're really him." Jay poured 2 glasses of water. "Last I checked." Velocity hesitated. "They say you should be like 90? Jay shrugged lightly. "Speed affects more than distance, kid. When you spend enough time brushing against the current, it brushes back." Velocity tilted his head. "The current?" Jay's expression shifted slightly. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked. Velocity hesitated, then nodded. When he ran at top speed, there was something else. A hum, a vibration under reality. Like he wasn't just moving through the world, but through something behind it. Jay stepped onto his back porch. "Run," he said simply. Velocity frowned. "That's it? No warm-up speech?" Jay's eyes glinted. "You want a speech or answers?" Velocity grinned and ran. The backyard vanished, the city blurred into light. He pushed harder than usual, faster than he ever had. The world melted into streaks of color. Then he felt it. That pressure again, that pull. The air shimmered, and suddenly the sky wasn't sky anymore. It was lightning. Endless lightning, golden currents spiraling across an infinite horizon of glowing energy. Velocity stumbled, nearly losing balance. "What is this?" he breathed. Jay stepped into view beside him, running effortlessly across glowing energy, as if it were solid ground. "The speed realm," Jay said calmly. Velocity's eyes widened. "It's real?" Jay nodded. "It's not just about moving fast. We don't create the speed. We tap into it. It's an energy field that exists beyond time and space. It's alive in its own way." Lightning arced beneath their feet. "You touch it every time you run," Jay continued, "but you're skimming the surface." Velocity looked around in awe. The realm pulsed, streams of energy flowing like rivers in the sky. Echoes of movement flickered in the distance, shadows of past speedsters leaving after images across eternity. "Why can you come here so easily?" Velocity asked. Jay slowed slightly. "Because I've had decades to learn, and because the realm kept me." Velocity looked at him. Jay's voice softened. "When you run fast enough, long enough, you exist between moments. Time doesn't hold you the same way. That's why I age slower. Why I'm still here." Velocity swallowed. "So I could outlive your friends?" Jay finished quietly. Silence crackled between them. The realm surged around them. Jay clapped a hand on Velocity's shoulder. "That's why control matters. Speed isn't just about going faster than the other guy. It's about knowing when to slow down." Suddenly, the energy around them shifted violently. A ripple tore across the realm. Velocity nearly fell as a wave of lightning surged toward them. "What was that?" he shouted. Jay's face hardened. The realm reacts to imbalance. Strong emotions, reckless use. The lightning wave crashed toward Velocity. "Run through it," Jay commanded. Velocity hesitated. "It'll tear me apart." "Trust it." The wave hit. Velocity felt everything at once. Fear, exhilaration, power. Instead of fighting it, he leaned forward, ran into it. The lightning wrapped around him, not burning, but lifting. For a split second, he felt weightless, connected. He saw glimpses. Jay in World War II. Future flashes of himself racing across cities. Other speedsters he didn't recognize. Then it stabilized. The realm calmed. Velocity stood upright, breathing hard. Jay nodded slowly. "Good." Velocity looked down at his hands, crackling faintly with controlled energy. "I felt bigger." "You're part of something bigger," Jay corrected. "Every step you take echoes here." Velocity looked out at the endless lightning horizon. "So what's the catch?" Jay's expression grew serious. "If you lose control, if you let anger or ego drive you, the realm can pull you in permanently." Velocity blinked. "Like, trapped forever?" Jay didn't answer directly, but the silence did. After a moment, Jay smiled faintly. "Which is why you train." He took off at blinding speed. "First lesson, don't rely on straight lines." Velocity grinned. "Oh, it's on, Grandpa." They raced across rivers of lightning, Jay weaving unpredictably, Velocity adapting, learning to pivot mid-stride, to feel currents before they shifted. For the first time, Ethan wasn't just fast, he was focused. Hours later, though no time had technically passed, they stepped back into Jay's backyard. The world resumed as if nothing had changed. Velocity exhaled. "That was insane." Jay leaned against the porch railing. "You've got potential, Ethan." Velocity blinked. "You know my name?" Jay smiled knowingly. "I was fast long before you were born. Hard not to notice a new lightning strike in the same city." Velocity rubbed the back of his neck. "So what now?" Jay's eyes drifted toward the skyline of Evergreen City. "Now," he said quietly, "you learn to be more than fast." Police sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Velocity's visor slid down over his eyes. Jay stepped back toward the house. "Go," he said. "The city's calling." Velocity grinned. "Thanks. Lightning bolt." Jay nodded once. "Run smart." Velocity vanished in a streak of red. Jay watched the fading lightning trail across the horizon. Another speedster, another chance, and somewhere deep within the unseen currents of the speed realm, the lightning pulsed. To be continued.
greatest is number 0.3. And then velocity number 1.
World's greatest, 0.3. Jay Garnett's porch light buzzed softly in the quiet evening air. Crickets chirped. The city skyline of Evergreen glowed faintly in the distance. Jay sat in an old wooden chair, silver goggles resting on the small table beside him. A newspaper lay folded in his lap. Another headline about masked vigilantes and rising organized crime. A red streak tore down the road. Velocity stopped just short of the porch steps, sneakers scraping lightly against pavement. "Okay," Ethan said, pulling off his visor. "So I might have made a friend." Jay didn't look up immediately. "That's so?" "Well, not exactly a friend." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, more like a highly sarcastic arrow-shooting rooftop enthusiast. Jay raised an eyebrow. "You mean that vigilante?" "Hero," Ethan corrected quickly. "He's a hero." Jay finally looked up at him. "Robin Hood," he said calmly. Ethan blinked. "You know about him?" Jay gave him a look. "Kid, I've been running since before your grandparents were born. You think I don't keep tabs on my own city?" Ethan shrugged slightly. "Okay, fair." Jay leaned back in his chair. "You and him fought?" "Briefly," Ethan admitted. "Then we teamed up. He's good, Jay. Like, really good. Doesn't miss, doesn't kill, and he's actually helping people." Jay studied him. "You sound defensive." "I'm not defensive. You're talking fast. I always talk fast." Jay smirked faintly. Ethan sat on the porch steps, elbows on his knees. "The police don't like him," Ethan said. "Call him reckless, vigilante, liability." Jay's gaze drifted toward the skyline. "They said worse about us." Ethan looked back at him. "You don't think he's crossing a line?" Jay shook his head slowly. "He doesn't kill. No." "He protects civilians?" "Yeah." "He targets criminals?" "Pretty much exclusively." Jay nodded once. "Then he's a hero. Titles don't matter. Intent does." Ethan let that settle. The wind rustled the trees. After a moment, Ethan spoke again. "Jay, when you were on the Justice Syndicate," Jay's expression softened slightly. "Yeah." "Did it feel different? Like, bigger?" Jay didn't answer immediately. "It felt necessary," he said finally. "The world was tearing itself apart. Alone, we were strong. Together, we were unstoppable." Ethan stared out at the city lights. "I've been wondering something." Jay tilted his head. "That's usually dangerous." Ethan ignored the jab. "Do you think there are others out there?" Jay's eyes sharpened slightly. "Others?" "Yeah, not just Robin Hood. I mean, people like us. Different cities, different powers. Maybe they're just starting out." Jay studied him carefully. "Why do you want to know?" Ethan hesitated, then said it. "Maybe we could bring back the Justice Syndicate of America." Jay's expression shifted, nostalgia and caution colliding. "Or," Ethan added quickly, "make something better, something new, especially right now. The world's kind of a mess." Jay let out a slow breath. "You think a team fixes that?" "I think hope does," Ethan replied quietly. "And hope's easier when it's not just one person running around." Jay looked at him differently then, not as a reckless kid with speed, but as someone thinking beyond himself. "You've grown," Jay said softly. Ethan shrugged. "Don't sound so surprised." Jay stood and stepped off the porch, walking a few feet into the yard. The moonlight caught the faint silver of his goggles. "I would like that," Jay admitted. Ethan's eyes lit up slightly. "Yeah?" Jay nodded once. "I would." Hope flickered between them. Then Jay's tone shifted. "But I don't think it could happen." Ethan's shoulders fell slightly. "Why not?" Jay looked toward the horizon. "Because teams aren't built from power," he said. "They're built from timing, from trust, from the world being ready." He turned back to Ethan. "And right now, the world doesn't even know it needs something like that again." Ethan was quiet. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Another night in Evergreen City. Another problem somewhere. Jay placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Don't force it," he said. "If it's meant to happen, it will." Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah." He pulled his visor back down. "But when it does," he said with a faint grin, "we'll be ready." Jay allowed himself a small smile. "Run smart, Ethan." Velocity stepped backward, then vanished into a streak of red lightning cutting across the night sky. Jay remained in the yard long after the sound faded. The wind moved through the trees, and somewhere deep within the unseen currents of the speed realm, lightning pulsed, not in chaos, not in warning, but in anticipation. To be continued.
Now we get Velocity. Number 1, and then changeling number 0.
Velocity number 1. 1 week after his visit with Jay Garnett, Evergreen City was beginning to adjust to its newest blur of red lightning. Security cameras caught streaks, witnesses reported sudden gusts of wind, criminals reported dizziness and embarrassment. Tonight was no different. Evergreen First National Bank. 3 armed men in black tactical gear stormed through the front doors, shouting orders and waving rifles. "Everyone down!" Customers screamed. A teller hit the silent alarm. The robbers had exactly 12 seconds before the doors blew open from the pressure of displaced air. Velocity skidded into the lobby in a crack of sound. "Okay," he said cheerfully, looking around. "Let's try something new tonight. You guys drop the guns and I pretend this never happened?" One robber swung his weapon toward the voice. Too slow. Velocity vanished. In less than a blink, the rifles were dismantled, magazines removed, bolts pocketed. One man found his shoelaces tied tightly together. Time resumed. The 3 men collapsed in a tangled heap. Velocity stood atop the counter. "Evergreen City," he announced dramatically, "your friendly neighborhood overachiever strikes again." Police sirens wailed outside. Velocity gave a small bow and zipped out through the revolving doors before officers arrived. A week later, another bank, different district, same Red Dragon insignias. Velocity arrived in less than a heartbeat, but something was wrong. The air felt heavy, cold. He stepped inside and stopped. The entire lobby was frozen, not slowed, frozen. Civilians stood mid-motion, expressions locked in fear. Robbers were suspended like statues. Frost coated the walls, spreading outward in jagged patterns across marble floors. Velocity moved cautiously between them, his breath fogged in front of his mask. "What the?" A sharp crack echoed behind him. Ice shattered across the ceiling. A figure stepped from the back hallway. Winter coat lined with reinforced padding. Dark blue and white armor plates beneath. Heavy boots crunching over frost. A mask covered the lower half of his face. Goggles shielded his eyes. In his hands, a weapon humming with icy energy. "So," the man said calmly, voice slightly distorted behind the mask, "you're the fast one." Velocity tilted his head. "And you're underdressed for summer." The man raised the weapon. A beam of freezing energy shot forward. Velocity dodged instantly, but the beam followed faster than expected, grazing his shoulder. Ice spread across his suit where it made contact. He skidded across the frozen floor. "Okay," he muttered. "That's new." The man fired again. Velocity ran, but the cold in the air slowed him slightly. Frost formed under his feet, reducing traction. The beam clipped his leg. Ice crawled upward. Velocity grimaced. "You are fast," the man said calmly, advancing. "But cold slows molecules, including you." Velocity ripped the frozen layer off his leg and accelerated, circling the room in tight arcs. He tested something. He ran faster. Faster. Friction heated the air around him. The frost beneath his feet began to melt. The man narrowed his eyes behind his goggles. "Adaptive," he muttered. Velocity darted forward, delivering a rapid punch to the ice gun. The weapon cracked, but didn't shatter. The man countered with a blast directly into the floor. An explosion of ice erupted upward, slamming Velocity into a frozen pillar. He hit hard. The winter-clad attacker approached slowly. "You rely on movement," he said. "Predictable." Velocity coughed slightly. "Yeah," he replied, "but I also rely on being annoying." He vanished. The man turned. Too late. Velocity reappeared behind him, spinning in a tight cyclone. The rapid circular motion generated intense heat, disrupting the freezing field. The ice gun overheated, cracked, and exploded in a shower of frozen shards. Velocity tackled the man to the ground, pinning his arms before he could recover. The goggles slipped slightly during the struggle. Velocity caught a glimpse of his face, mid-30s, pale, sharp features. "Name?" Velocity demanded. The man glared. "Victor Kane." Police sirens approached in the distance. Victor smirked faintly. "You can't outrun winter." Velocity tightened the grip. "Maybe not," he replied, "but I can definitely trip it." He zipped out just before officers stormed in. Moments later, they found Victor Kane restrained with melted ice refreezing around broken weapon components. The next morning, news vans crowded the bank. Victoria Hale stood before cameras. "This marks the first confirmed superpowered criminal incident in Evergreen City," she reported. Authorities have identified the suspect as Victor Kane, though the media has already begun referring to him as Frostbite. The name spread quickly. Frostbite. Across town, Ethan Mercer watched the broadcast from his apartment. He muted the TV. His reflection stared back at him in the dark screen. Jay's words echoed in his mind. The world doesn't even know it needs something like that again. Ethan looked toward the skyline. Now there were supervillains, real ones. He slid his visor onto the desk. Okay, he muttered to himself. Guess we're leveling up. Outside, snow flurries drifted briefly across Evergreen City, despite the forecast calling for clear skies. To be continued.
I just couldn't get past that stage. You know yourself, like when you're in school and your teacher's not there for the first 5 minutes, you're like, oh, can I break? We get this. And then the soap would walk in and everyone would be like, oh, here we go. You'd like, sleep. You'd just sit next to your baby. Some people would be fighting in the corner. Substitute teacher didn't have a chat. I always remember there was this one substitute teacher. I was in maths, and like this lad in front of us like made her cry. Like he just kept going, and when she started crying, he like.
Now changeling number 0. After this is Nightwolf number 0.2.
Changeling 0. Mars did not die quietly. It burned. Red skies cracked apart as cities of crystal and stone collapsed into ash. The Red Martians, ancient, powerful, telepathic, felt the extinction of their species ripple through their shared consciousness in one final psychic scream. Among the chaos, one survived. He had no time to mourn. Warships darkened the atmosphere. Energy storms tore across the planet's surface. The last surviving Red Martian sprinted across collapsing terrain toward an emergency scout vessel buried beneath a spire of red rock. He felt them falling, one by one. The hive mind fractured into silence. Alone. For the first time in his existence, alone, he launched. The small craft tore free of Mars, just as the planet's surface detonated in catastrophic ruin. The shockwave hurled him into deep space. Through cold stars and endless dark, he drifted. Days, weeks, time blurred, until blue filled the viewport. Earth? He crash-landed in the outskirts of a sprawling American city, Jackson City. Rain fell against the cracked hull of his vessel as steam rose from its surface. The Martian stepped out into the night, tall, slender, skin crimson, eyes glowing faintly gold. He felt minds everywhere. Loud, chaotic, emotional, human. He concentrated. His form shifted, bones reshaped, skin tone softened, eyes dimmed, height adjusted, hair formed. Within moments, a human man stood in the rain where the alien had been. Dark hair, brown eyes, early 30s. He tested his voice. Nathan. The name came from a nearby billboard advertisement. He tried again. Nathan Nolan. It felt functional. He walked into Jackson City. A week later, Detective Nathan Nolan stood in a dimly lit precinct office staring at a crime scene photograph pinned to a corkboard. The victim had been posed upright in a chair, arms folded peacefully, eyes closed, almost serene, except for the deep, deliberate wound carved across the chest. The press had named the killer Scar, because every victim bore the same signature slash. Nathan adjusted his tie, still slightly uncomfortable in the clothing. Human fabrics itched. "You're new," another detective muttered, sipping stale coffee. Nathan nodded. Yes. He had learned quickly. Speech patterns, eye contact, humor, when to nod, when to stay silent. But emotions were harder. Humans leaked emotion constantly. Grief clung to this room. Fear too. Scar had killed 6 times in 3 weeks. Nathan studied the photograph again. He closed his eyes, reached outward carefully with his mind. Psychic impressions lingered at crime scenes. Emotional residue embedded in space itself. He felt it. Control. Precision. An artist's pride. Scar did not kill in rage. He curated. Nathan opened his eyes. "I know where he will go next," he said quietly. The other detective blinked. "What?" But Nathan was already walking out. Abandoned theater district. Night. Nathan stood alone inside a crumbling auditorium. Moonlight cut through broken ceiling panels, illuminating dust drifting in the air. On stage, another body, fresh, posed beneath a spotlight. Nathan stepped forward slowly. "You enjoy symmetry," he said aloud. A slow clap echoed from the balcony. A man stepped into view. Tall, thin, sharp features, bust, a long blade glinted in his hand. "You must be the new detective," the man said calmly. "You arrived quicker than the others." Nathan tilted his head slightly. "You call yourself Scar?" The man smiled faintly. "I leave reminders." Nathan studied him, not just visually, mentally. He brushed the edges of Scar's thoughts and recoiled. There was something broken there. Not madness, calculation. "I can stop you," Nathan said quietly. Scar descended the balcony stairs. "You're just a man." Nathan's eyes flickered faintly gold for a split second. "I am not." He lunged, moving faster than human. Scar dodged with surprising agility, slashing across Nathan's chest. The blade tore fabric, but not skin. Nathan grabbed Scar's wrist, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. Scar's eyes widened. "What are you?" Before Nathan could answer, floodlights exploded on around the theater. Red laser sights dotted Nathan's body. Armed soldiers flooded the room from every entrance. "Do not move," a commanding voice shouted. Nathan froze. He felt it instantly, not fear, but recognition. Their minds were disciplined, shielded, prepared. The United States government had been watching, studying anomalies, waiting. Scar smiled faintly from the ground as soldiers swarmed him too. "Told you," Scar whispered weakly. "You're not just a man." Nathan's gaze swept the room. Too many weapons, too many minds locked in synchronized intent. A high-frequency pulse device activated. The sound struck him like a hammer. His form flickered involuntarily, skin briefly flashing red beneath the illusion. Gasps echoed among the soldiers. "Target confirmed," someone shouted. Nathan staggered. Restraints clamped around his wrists, lined with unfamiliar alloys. He could fight. He could break free. But the humans, they would fire, and innocents outside this building would suffer. So he allowed it. As they forced him to his knees, his disguise faltered again. Crimson skin shimmered through human features. A soldier stepped closer, eyes wide. "Jesus!" Nathan looked up slowly, gold eyes glowing faintly now. Not angry, just tired. Alone again. A black transport vehicle waited outside. The last Red Martian was taken into custody beneath the lights of Jackson City. And somewhere deep within a classified government facility, a new file was opened. Subject designation pending. But in the mind of the alien once known to his people, a single-formed changeling. To be continued.
Like, this isn't exactly what happened in my drama class, apart from, I think I've said this before, our drama teacher, as a monk, it used to make you take your socks and shoes off for no reason at all. Like, it didn't cost you anything. Just, if you went to his classroom, which by the way, said what we call, you had to be barefoot. Now looking back, that's not too great. I mean, he wasn't at the school for long, but I think he was only there for a year, so would that had something to do with it?
And then after this vlog,
Nightwolf 0.2. Jackson City did not sleep. It flickered. Neon lights reflected off rain-slick pavement as sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Crime here wasn't chaotic. It was patterned, organized, intentional, and someone had been studying the pattern. Perched high above the city skyline, a dark figure crouched on the edge of a gothic gargoyle. Nightwolf. His armored suit absorbed the darkness itself. Matte black plating layered over flexible tactical mesh, faint green lines tracing the contours like a predator's pulse. The wolf-shaped helmet narrowed at the eyes, lenses glowing a low emerald hue. A reinforced cape hung behind him, torn at the ends like shredded fur. Below, inside an abandoned opera house, Scar prepared his next masterpiece. Nightwolf had been tracking him for 3 nights, cross-referencing police reports, studying crime scene photos intercepted through hacked precinct servers, analyzing behavioral rhythms, victim profiles. Scar didn't kill randomly. He performed, and tonight's stage had been obvious. Nightwolf tapped the side of his cowl. A quiet hum activated enhanced audio sensors. Inside the opera house, footsteps echoed across the main floor. One set, measured, calm. Nightwolf leapt. He fell silently, cape folding inward, boots hitting a fire escape without a sound. A grappling line fired from his gauntlet, anchoring him to a cracked balcony window. He swung inward just as the moon slid behind clouds. Darkness swallowed the room. Scar stood near center stage, arranging a chair beneath a dusty spotlight. "You're early," Scar said without turning. Nightwolf tilted his head slightly. "Your timing's off," he replied, voice distorted through the mask. Low, controlled, edged with dry humor. Artists should never rush the reveal. Scar turned slowly, blade already in hand. "You're not law enforcement." "Nope." Nightwolf stepped into faint moonlight. "Worse." Scar lunged with precision, slashing fast and clean. Nightwolf moved like smoke. He sidestepped, caught Scar's wrist, twisted. Bones cracked audibly. The blade clattered across the stage. Scar tried to counter with his other hand, but Nightwolf drove a reinforced elbow into his sternum, sending him sprawling. Scar rolled, surprisingly agile, grabbing a hidden secondary knife from his boot. Nightwolf exhaled through his mask, always the backup blade. Scar slashed again, this time grazing Nightwolf's shoulder plating, sparks flying from the impact. Nightwolf responded instantly. A small device deployed from his belt, sonic emitter. A sharp pulse disoriented Scar long enough for Nightwolf to close the gap. He swept Scar's legs, pinned him face down, and locked both arms behind his back with reinforced restraints. Scar struggled. "Who are you?" he hissed. Nightwolf leaned closer. "I'm the consequence." Scar spat blood onto the stage. "You won't kill me?" Nightwolf paused, a beat. Then a low chuckle crackled through the voice modulator. "Not my style." He hauled Scar upright and dragged him toward the center of the stage. Minutes later, when police sirens began approaching, they would find a very different scene than expected. Scar sat bound upright in the chair he had prepared for someone else. Arms neatly secured, legs locked, mouth gagged. A large red ribbon tied around his torso in a perfect bow. On his chest, taped carefully, to JCPD. "You're welcome." Nightwolf outside, Commissioner Dale Renshaw stepped out of his patrol car as officers flooded the Opera House. They found Scar exactly as presented. Gift-wrapped, humiliated, alive. Renshaw's jaw tightened as he read the note. "He's mocking us," one officer muttered. "He's interfering," another added. Renshaw crushed the note in his hand. "I don't care how many criminals he hands us. He's still a vigilante, and vigilantes don't answer to anyone." High above, hidden among the Gothic architecture across the street, Nightwolf watched silently. The green lenses of his mask dimmed slightly. "They don't have to like me," he murmured to himself. As officers loaded Scar into a transport vehicle, Nightwolf fired his grappling line upward. The cable pulled him into the skyline, cape vanishing into shadow. Within seconds, gone. Only the echo of distant thunder remained. And in Jackson City, the legend of Nightwolf grew darker. To be continued.
And now, after this one, the rest will just be Nightwolf stories until the final one, I believe.
Have Velocity number 2. Evergreen City had a new problem. It wasn't ice this time. It was fire. Flames crawled up the side of a downtown apartment complex, orange and violent against the night sky. Smoke billowed upward, choking the air as people...
And it was her birthday. We went on restaurants all day.
Have Velocity number 2. Evergreen City had a new problem. It wasn't ice this time. It was fire. Flames crawled up the side of a downtown apartment complex, orange and violent against the night sky. Smoke billowed upward, choking the air as people screamed from windows. Fire trucks hadn't arrived yet, but someone else had. A streak of red and silver tore down Main Street, wind spiraling behind him like a living wake. Velocity, Ethan Mercer's heart pounded. Not from the run, but from the heat radiating half a block away. "Okay," he muttered to himself, skidding to a stop. Definitely not a toaster accident. He blurred into motion. In less than a second, he was inside the burning building, moving fast enough that flames bent away from him in streaks. He grabbed a woman and her child from the 3rd floor, whisked them down to safety, then zipped back in before the fire could fully reclaim the hallway. 3 trips, 5 trips, 8. Each time he pushed himself a little harder, his boots skidding against melting flooring, his suit singed at the edges. On the rooftop across the street, a man stood watching. Long, dark coat, wild eyes. A metallic gauntlet strapped to his right arm, nozzle glowing at the tip like a dragon's mouth. He laughed as he squeezed the trigger, sending another arc of fire toward the building. Velocity reappeared behind him in a gust of wind. "Hey, fire safety tip!" Velocity shouted. "This is why we don't play with matches." The man spun, startled, but not slow. A stream of flame erupted toward Velocity. Ethan bolted sideways just before the blast connected, feeling the heat lick across his back. The man grinned. "You're fast," he said in a thick Eastern European accent. "Let's see how fast you burn." He unleashed a wide spray of fire, forcing Velocity to keep moving. Rooftop gravel exploded under Ethan's rapid footwork as he ran tight circles, creating a vortex that began pulling the flames upward and away. Wind fed fire, but controlled wind? That redirected it. Velocity shot forward, vibrating his hand at high speed and slamming it into the man's gauntlet. The metal rattled violently, gears shredding under the friction. The weapon sparked, then detonated in a small concussive blast. Both men were thrown backward. Velocity recovered first. Of course he did, and zipped forward, twisting the man's arms behind his back in reinforced zip restraints he carried for moments exactly like this. The man struggled, face streaked with soot. My name is Dacian Radu. Velocity tilted his head. Cool. I'm calling you guy who owes the fire department an apology. Sirens echoed closer now. Dacian laughed, even restrained. You cannot stop the cleansing fire. Velocity crouched slightly so they were eye to eye. Buddy, I just ran 8 people out of that building before you finished your villain monologue. He stood as police cars screeched onto the street below. In the distance, firefighters finally began containing the blaze, most of it already weakened by Velocity's high-speed wind funnels. The next morning, headlines spread across Evergreen City. Inferno strikes downtown. Velocity stops blazing madman. News footage replayed the rooftop confrontation in blurry cell phone clips. Reporters speculated about the mysterious fire starter. Though Dacian Radu had been identified by police, the media had already given him something else, a name that would stick. Inferno. Back in his small apartment, Ethan Mercer sat on the couch, watching the coverage with wide eyes. He had soot in his hair, a bandage on his shoulder, and a grin he couldn't hide. Frostbite, he muttered. Inferno. He flopped back dramatically. Why do my villains sound like rejected heavy metal bands? His phone buzzed with notifications, social media exploding with praise and debate. Some called him a hero. Some called him reckless. Some wondered how long until someone faster or stronger showed up. Ethan stared at the ceiling. Jay Garnett's words echoed in his head. There are others out there. Maybe there were. Maybe Evergreen City wasn't the only place building legends. Ethan sat up slowly. Okay, he said to himself. If they're leveling up. He looked toward the window, city skyline glowing beyond the glass. Then I guess I better level up too. Outside, wind stirred lightly along the rooftops. And somewhere, far from Evergreen City, someone else watched the news about Velocity with quiet interest. To be continued.
That entire night, I kept waking up, hearing footsteps.
Now, the rest should be just Nightwolf until the final story that I made. We have Nightwolf number 1, which is split up into 3 parts, but just one story.
That is not the scary part of this video. The scary part is what happened once we returned from the
Nightwolf number 1, part 1. The night the city broke was the night Max Jackson learned what fear truly was. Rain slicked the streets of Jackson City, neon lights reflecting off puddles like fractured stars. Matthew Jackson and Martha Jackson had just taken their youngest son to the movies. Max still held the ticket stub in his small hand as they walked. We'll cut through here, his father said softly, guiding them down an alley. The gunshots came fast. Sharp, final. Max didn't understand at first. He only knew his father's hand wasn't holding his anymore. Matthew Jackson fell first. Martha Jackson dropped seconds later, her scream cut short by the echo of another shot. The shooter vanished into the dark. Max knelt between them, rain mixing with blood, the alley swallowing his cries. That same night, miles away, another tragedy struck. Max's older brother, an undercover government agent, died in what officials called a mysterious car accident. The report was clean, too clean. 2 sons, no parents, 1 left alone. Max Jackson was adopted by the family's loyal butler, Bruce Parker. Bruce wasn't just a servant. He had practically raised the boys. He became father, guardian, and quiet protector. But grief turned into something else inside Max, something colder, something sharper. As a teenager, Max left Jackson City without telling anyone where he was going. The world thought he was traveling for education. He was traveling for war. He found the Crescent Dominion, a shadowed organization of elite warriors led by Raheem Al-Zafir. They did not believe in weakness. They believed in discipline, control, and fear. But it was Layla Al-Zafir, Raheem's daughter, who trained him. She was precise, relentless. She broke him down and rebuilt him. Max learned stealth, blade work, hand-to-hand combat, and the art of disappearing before anyone knew he was there. He learned how criminals think, how power corrupts, how fear can be weaponized. And deep down, he nurtured something else, rage. Part 2. Years later, Max returned to Jackson City. He enrolled in college under his own name, public, visible, controlled. There he reconnected with an old friend, Adrian Jekyll, an ambitious student determined to become district attorney. Over coffee one evening, Adrian spoke with fire in his eyes. "We clean this city up legally," Adrian said. "Victor Cady, Red Mask, Marco DeLuca, Luciano Moretti, the Roman. We take them down the right way." Max gave a faint smile. "The right way," he repeated quietly. They graduated early. Adrian pursued law. Max pursued something else. Back at Jackson Industries, Max accessed old defense prototypes designed for military contracts. Advanced armor, tactical visors, reinforced gauntlets. He redesigned it himself. Black armor plated like a predator's hide, green accents glowing faintly along the seams, a helmet shaped like a wolf, angular, intimidating, a symbol born of fear. He became Nightwolf. His first hunt was small. The Purple Gang had begun robbing shipments from Blackwater Chemical Plant. Their leader, Lorenzo Vitale, the so-called Purple Man, was absent. But his men were there, alongside another masked criminal, red helmet, a mantle worn by whoever needed to hide their identity. Nightwolf descended like a shadow. One by one, the Purple Gang members fell, silenced, disarmed, restrained. Red Helmet fought harder, desperate. During the struggle, Red Helmet stumbled backward, crashing into a railing and plunging into a vat of unstable chemicals below. There was a splash, then nothing. Nightwolf stared down into the swirling liquid. Dead, he assumed. He vanished before police arrived. Part 3, inside the Jackson City Police Department. Commissioner Theodore Theo Granger slammed a newspaper onto his desk. "I will not have some armored vigilante operating in my city," Granger barked. "Lieutenant Mercer, Detective Kessler, you bring me this Nightwolf." Lieutenant Daniel Mercer nodded grimly. Detective Raymond Ray Kessler cracked his knuckles. Elsewhere, Nightwolf moved again. The Seaside Rats. Small-time criminals working for Dominic Falconer Struthers, known as Ostrich, were terrorizing dock workers. Nightwolf tracked them to a nightclub called the Gilded Nest. He struck fast outside, dismantling a patrol before slipping into the shadows as police sirens approached. But he wasn't finished. He circled back. Through the rear. Through the vents. Inside the Gilded Nest, the lights pulsed with music. But in the back corridors, darkness ruled. Nightwolf moved like something not human. A thug lifted off the ground and disappeared into the rafters. Another was yanked into a supply closet. A third collapsed from a precise nerve strike. Arkham-style fear tactics executed flawlessly. Finally, Nightwolf entered Dominic Struthers' office. Ostrich barely had time to reach his drawer before Nightwolf smashed the desk aside and slammed him to the ground. Minutes later, police would find Dominic Struthers unconscious, bound and literally gift-wrapped in decorative ribbon from his own club. But Nightwolf was already gone. He escaped through a ventilation shaft that dropped into a back alley. That's when he saw it, a body, teenage, one of the Seaside Rats, his hand missing, one eye grotesquely forced from its socket. Nightwolf knelt slowly. This wasn't his work. This was something worse, something surgical, deliberate. Somewhere across town, reporter Grant Mercer stood before flashing cameras. Tonight, a new vigilante calling himself Nightwolf continues his war on organized crime in Jackson City, Grant reported calmly. While police condemn his actions, many citizens are calling him a hero. However, a gruesome discovery behind the Gilded Nest raises new questions. Is Nightwolf escalating, or is something far darker stalking our streets? The camera light reflected in Grant's eyes as sirens wailed in the distance, and from a nearby rooftop, unseen, Nightwolf watched. The city had monsters. He just didn't know yet how many. To be continued.
Now, Nightwolf number 1.5, which is a short story, and then we go into number 2.
Nightwolf 1.5. The rain hadn't stopped by the time Max returned to Jackson Manor. The armor was secured. The wolf mask rested on a steel table in the hidden lower level of the estate. Max stood in the dim light, staring at it. Bruce Parker entered quietly, as he always did. The older man carried himself with calm precision, hands folded behind his back. "I saw the report," Bruce said gently. "A teenage boy, brutalized." Max didn't turn. Bruce stepped closer, studying him carefully. "Did you kill that teen, Max?" The question wasn't accusatory. It was protective. Max finally faced him, jaw tight. "No," he said firmly. "I won't murder." Bruce's eyes searched his. "I trained you to stop criminals," Bruce replied, "not become one." Max's voice lowered. "I don't kill. I disable. I deliver them to the police. That boy, that wasn't me." Silence filled the cave-like chamber. Bruce nodded slowly. "Then that means there is a murderer out there, Master Jackson." The words hung heavy. Max walked toward a screen displaying crime scene photos, zooming in on the missing hand, the grotesque injury to the eye. "This wasn't rage," Max muttered. "It was precise, deliberate." Bruce stepped beside him. "Surgical." Max's eyes narrowed. "Yes." He replayed the scene in his mind. The seaside rats had been shaken, nervous, looking over their shoulders. They hadn't just been afraid of Nightwolf. They had been afraid of something else. Bruce rested a steady hand on Max's shoulder. "You cannot control everything in this city, sir, but if there is someone escalating beyond your code, then you must be careful." Max picked up the wolf mask. His reflection stared back at him through the dark lenses. "There are bigger predators out there," he said quietly. Bruce's tone sharpened slightly, the only hint of concern breaking through his composure. "And predators hunt each other." Max secured the mask under his arm. "Good," he replied. Upstairs, thunder rolled across Jackson City, and somewhere in the darkness, another monster prepared its next move. To be continued.
Now we go on to number 2. And then we get number 2.2. And number
Nightwolf number 2. The evening started differently for Max Jackson. Rain had cleared, leaving the streets of Jackson City glimmering under the neon glow of streetlights. Tonight, he wasn't thinking about crime or vengeance. He was thinking about Princess Elena Cross. They walked through a small, quiet park downtown, sharing laughter and gentle teasing, their hands brushing occasionally. For the first time in a long time, Max felt human again. He felt normal. The next day, Jackson Industries hummed with activity. Max sat in his office, analyzing environmental reports with the scientists he trusted. Daniel Rivers, the aquatic scientist, pointed to a filtration chart. "We can make the water cleaner faster, but it'll take precision adjustments to the treatment cycles." Max nodded. "Do it. If people are going to drink water from our city, it should be better than anywhere else." Junior scientist Adrian Vale leaned on the corner of the desk. "And the air quality? With the factory emissions? I've got proposals for scrubbers and atmospheric filters. If we implement them now, we could cut pollutants by nearly half." Max smiled faintly. "Good. Keep at it. We can't just fight crime outside. We can fight it by making life better inside, too." That night, in the Wolf Cave, Max donned his Nightwolf suit. The sleek black and green armor gleamed under the dim lights, helmet reflecting faint holographic screens displaying recent activity across the city. Bruce Parker stood nearby, silent as always, observing. The body discovered last night lay under the digital magnification of AR analysis. Another teenage criminal, hand missing, eye gouged, mutilated. Nightwolf studied the scene carefully. "Someone's escalating," Max murmured. "Not random, deliberate." Bruce's voice was low, calm. "We need to be careful. Whoever this is, they're skilled." Nightwolf nodded. "And they're hiding in the shadows." Patrolling later that night, Nightwolf came across the Seaside Rats' old hideout. Outside, a body lay sprawled. Inside, the scene was worse. One teenager burned beyond recognition. Another impaled through a window pane. A third hanging from the ceiling, rope taut. A fourth suffocated, untouched, an unsettling precision in the murder. Nightwolf activated his AR crime scene analysis. Through the helmet's overlay, he replayed the scene. The teenager sat idly in the room. The killer entered through a side window, knocked out a nearby victim, doused him with gasoline, then exited. Using the second victim, he threw another through the broken window. The last two were subdued, one hanged. And finally, the side room victim was set ablaze. Evidence was collected, a piece of clothing, a streak of blood, clues for the hunter. Nightwolf didn't rest. He took down a red mask operation led by Victor Cade, a skull-masked mobster whose red mask had been forged from his father's coffin. Precise strikes, stealth, and timing made short work of Cade's men. Returning to the wolf cave, Nightwolf analyzed the DNA from the evidence. It shocked him. Marcus Matthews, his former employee, a cop who retired after marriage, who then joined Jackson Industries. His wife had died in a fire Marcus blamed on the criminal teenagers. Nightwolf's jaw tightened. Justice and vengeance sometimes blurred. Later that night, while taking down random criminals, a scream pierced an alleyway. Nightwolf arrived to see a teenager cornered by a man in all black. But there was something wrong. The man wasn't near the kid. Only his shadow moved toward the victim. Nightwolf's mind clicked. Metahumans, he had seen them on the news. Velocity, Skyforge, Coastal City's Waterman myth. And now this. As the streetlight flicked on, the shadow vanished. Nightwolf realized the weakness. Light. Back in the wolf cave, he modified his cowl with night vision optics. He designed a palm-mounted light gadget, high-intensity, adjustable, so he could illuminate dark areas at will, turning a weakness into a tool. The next night, Nightwolf laid his trap. He created the illusion of a dark alleyway, enticing Marcus Matthews to strike. Nightwolf waited, his night vision active. As Marcus approached, his shadow looming, Nightwolf activated the light device. The brightness struck him full in the eyes. Marcus stumbled, writhing. His form shimmered, and finally, the monstrous shadow man reverted to his human self. Lieutenant Daniel Mercer arrived moments later, gun drawn, but too far for a shot. He watched as Nightwolf subdued Marcus efficiently. For the first time, he questioned everything he thought about the vigilante. Maybe he's not a threat, Daniel muttered. Nightwolf handed Marcus over to the police. The news reporters arrived. Cameras flashed. City safe, thanks to Nightwolf? One reporter asked. Shadow Man captured, another announced. On air, Grant Mercer spoke from the newsroom. Thank you, Grace, for that report. But images of Nightwolf keep appearing. So, is he real? Is he a myth? Perhaps today's true hero is Lieutenant Daniel Mercer, who stopped the Shadow Man's spree of murder. But if Nightwolf is out there, then maybe there's a hero watching over our city after all. Max, somewhere atop a rooftop, watched silently. The city slept, quiet for now. To be continued.
And I started to get freaked out by it. That's why I immediately was like, yeah, we should stop this. And I was completely on board for stopping. And I felt like whatever was there was no longer good. Okay, you're like, oh man. Let's say goodbye. Thank you for talking to us. All right, bye. Thank you for talking. Thank you for... We appreciate you. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoy our company. Goodbye.
Nightwolf number 2.2 Daylight. That alone made it different. Crime preferred shadows, so did Nightwolf. But violence didn't wait for sunset. Downtown Jackson City buzzed with afternoon traffic when a convoy of black SUVs screeched to a halt outside a financial transport truck. Doors burst open, men in tactical black armor poured out, red visors, a red dragon emblem burned across their chests. Disciplined, coordinated, military precision. Mercenaries, they move fast, neutralizing guards, jamming communications. Civilians scattered, screams filling the air. From a nearby rooftop, a figure watched. Black and green armor, wolf-shaped cowl. Nightwolf. Bold, he muttered. Daylight robbery. He leapt. The first mercenary barely saw the blur before Nightwolf crashed into him, slamming him against the pavement. Two more turned, rifles raised. Nightwolf rolled forward, disarming one with a wrist twist and cracking the other across the visor with a reinforced gauntlet. The red glass spider-webbed and shattered. Gunfire erupted. Nightwolf flipped behind the armored truck as bullets sparked against metal. He launched smoke pellets across the street, white clouds swallowing the scene. Within the smoke, chaos for them, clarity for him. One mercenary was yanked upward onto a streetlight by a grapnel line. Another was swept off his feet. A third felt a sharp nerve strike and collapsed instantly. The mercenary leader barked orders, visor glowing red through the haze. Nightwolf emerged from the smoke like a predator. They clashed in the open street, brute force against trained fury. The leader swung a combat blade. Nightwolf blocked, twisted, and delivered a calculated elbow strike to the throat. Seconds later, the entire team lay restrained with reinforced cable ties. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but something else had happened. Across the street, a bystander, frozen in awe, had raised their phone. Click. A perfect image. Nightwolf standing tall in the daylight, cape-like mantle flowing slightly, sunlight glinting off green accents in his armor, while defeated mercenaries lay around him. Not a shadow, not a rumor, a hero. Nightwolf vanished before the police arrived. That evening, the image aired on Jackson City News Channel 9. Grant Mercer stood beside Grace at the anchor desk. Behind them, the photo filled the screen. Clear, undeniable. Grace spoke first. For months, this armored figure known as Nightwolf has operated in darkness. But today, in broad daylight, we have undeniable proof. A protector in black and green armor stopping what authorities describe as a highly organized mercenary assault. Grant nodded thoughtfully. This image was sent directly to Channel 9 by a citizen on the scene. For the first time, the people of Jackson City aren't asking if Nightwolf exists. He paused slightly. They're asking if he's the hero this city needs. Grace leaned forward. Police have yet to comment officially, but sources confirm the group taken down today matches the description of a known mercenary faction operating internationally. Grant's tone shifted slightly, measured. Whether vigilante or guardian, Nightwolf is real. The photo remained on screen. Inside the Jackson City Police Department, Commissioner Theodore Granger was not impressed. He slammed a remote onto his desk, turning off the television. "I will not have the media glorifying a masked operative," he growled. Lieutenant Daniel Mercer stood quietly across from him. "With respect, sir," he stopped heavily armed mercenaries in the middle of downtown, without civilian casualties. Granger's eyes hardened. That's exactly the problem. If he succeeds publicly, people start trusting him more than the badge. He stepped around his desk. "I'm forming a task force, dedicated, funded, equipped." Daniel frowned slightly. "To arrest Nightwolf? To bring him in," Granger corrected coldly, "before he decides he's judge, jury, and executioner." Daniel didn't respond, because deep down he wasn't sure Nightwolf was the villain in this story. Later that night, Max stood alone in the wolf cave, the daylight photograph projected across the wall. Bruce studied it beside him. "You've become visible," Bruce observed. Max stared at the image. "That wasn't the plan." "No," Bruce replied, "but symbols rarely stay hidden." Max turned off the display. "Now they'll come harder." Bruce's voice remained calm. "Then we prepare." Above them, in the sprawling streets of Jackson City, the lines were being drawn. A city divided, a commissioner building a task force, a hero stepping into the light, and somewhere, someone else watching that photo very closely. To be continued.
Now number 2 point. Actually, I'm gonna stop this video then.